What else do we have here? I want to play some audio here. Can you cue up my audio? This came up yesterday. Somebody said, hey, Casey, did you hear about the effort to go ahead and allow illegal immigrants to get driver's licenses in Indiana? I said yesterday that I hadn't seen the legislation. I looked on the website. It wasn't there. It's there today. So it probably just hadn't been uploaded to the legislative website, but it is there today. This is Fox 59 with the story about Indiana lawmakers proposing once again, and it happens every legislative session, once again to allow illegal immigrants to get a driver's license in the state of Indiana.
Documented immigrants in Indiana to drive legally.
It's an idea that's been introduced several times before, but the bill never got a hearing. Fox 59's Kelly Rinke live in the newsroom tonight to show us why some lawmakers are trying again this year. Kelly?
Yeah, Dan and Beershell, the Indiana House Democratic Caucus says the bill has been introduced 7 times, and they're not sure if they will get a hearing this session, yet some representatives believe it's an important issue to take on. It's believed more than 100,000 undocumented immigrants drive on Indiana roads without a license. Now state lawmakers want to give them that privilege so they can drive legally.
This has been proven to be good for the economy. It makes our roads safer.
State Representative Chris Campbell advocated for her bill at the State House. It would provide driving cards and learner's permits to undocumented immigrants in our state.
Well, this bill was brought to me by community members. As a legislator, it's up to me to represent my community.
According to her bill, they would be required to pass a written test and driving test. It would also allow them to get car insurance. The driving cards would not allow an undocumented immigrant to vote.
We very much do not see this as a legal issue. We see this as a human rights issue. We see this as a human dignity issue.
Marion County Prosecutor Ryan Muir stood next to more than a dozen people today, showing their support for this legislation, including a resident with undocumented parents.
Driving in the shadows means driving with the fear of getting deported just simply because you got pulled over by a police officer for a simple traffic stop.
Advocates say families should be able to go to work or buy groceries without fear of deportation. This bill has not received much support in the past, yet Representative Campbell hopes more lawmakers will be open to the idea this time.
We represent everybody in the state, so this is an issue that affects everybody, whether you're a citizen or not.
Now, the bill was referred to the House Roads and Transportation Committee, but it does have some opposition. Former Republican State Senator Mike Delph told us, quote, driving is a privilege, not a right. When we try to extend privileges to those out of compliance with the law, we lower our historical standard. Follow the law and you can obtain a driver's license, end quote. Guys,
Kelly,
back to you.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't really say it much better than what he just said. We see this as a human rights issue. Okay, shut up. It's not a human rights issue. It's not a human right to be able to drive. For somebody to say something like that, I mean, it's just so fundamentally wrong. And that's not my opinion. It just is. It's not a human rights issue. You don't have a right to drive. It is a privilege. This is, we talk about this with flying and that sort of stuff. It's a privilege, okay? It's not a right. So, no, it's not a human right to be able to drive. And when you hear people who, look, my parents are illegal aliens, right? And you know what? They shouldn't have to fear getting deported simply because they get pulled over for a traffic violation. Well, one, they're not being deported for the traffic violation. They're being deported because they are living in this country illegally because they have violated the sovereignty laws of the United States of America. That is why they are getting deported. Can you imagine any other criminal making a statement like that? I'm wanted for robbing a bank, and I shouldn't have to drive afraid that I'm going to go to prison for robbing the bank simply because I get pulled over for a simple traffic violation. Could you imagine that argument being made about anything else? But they make it here. And then people saying that they should be able to go to the grocery store or to work without fear of being deported. You're not allowed to work. Not legally. So, no, you shouldn't be going to work. Okay? And if you are working, whomever you work for is breaking the law. And they should probably face punishment for that as well. But this is, they're pushing some research out there now that says, if you give them driver's licenses, then our roads are safer. You heard that little argument on there. But tens of thousands of Americans are impacted by illegal aliens driving and causing accidents every single day. Well, every single year, I should say. That's a reality that has been ignored for a very long time. Now, this notion that issuing these licenses is somehow going to fix that, the jury is still out on that, okay? But the idea that is going to make the roads safer, there's no data that shows that conclusively. None. And there's some data that would argue against that. But at the end of the day, you know, like the former representative said, if we're at a point where we're going to sit here and lower our standards, especially when we're lowering our standards only for a certain population, okay? So only some people get that lowered standards. The rest of us still have to adhere to the higher standards. But for some of us, we're going to lower those standards and make it a little bit easier for them because, you know, it's not fair or what have you. It demeans the entire thing. Either we are a nation of laws or we are not. And we have to pick one, because if we're not a nation of laws, well, you better stop telling me to do certain things then. If we are a nation of laws, then we better start enforcing those laws universally, because that's what this country is supposed to be about, but we're not doing any of that. So, again, it's not out of committee again. We'll have to see exactly what happens. It is authored by Representative Chris Campbell. She's a noob. And then it's co-authored by Representative Earl Harris, who are on there as well. Driving Cards provides the issuance of driving cards and driving card learner's permits to residents of Indiana who cannot provide proof of identity and lawful status in the United States. Provides that cards may not be used for federal identification or any other federal purpose. Requires that an individual who holds a card and operates a motor vehicle must verify that financial responsibility on any motor vehicle that the holder operates is continuously maintained in the amounts required by law, makes conforming amendments, makes technical corrections, et cetera, et cetera. So you have to have insurance and all of that. It doesn't even require that they have additional insurance, because remember, they're a flight risk now too. That's something else that has to be factored in here. Illegal immigrants are flight risks. They can disappear into other countries and not have to pay for the damage that they cause in an accident. So maybe they should be required to have additional protections on them that other people do not have to have. Anyway, 574-25-95-95-3. That is 2595-953. Got more coming up. News Talk 95.3, Michiana's news channel. Powell Stirna, in October of last year, issued a brief on illegal alien driver's licenses in the United States. And they did this for Fair US, which, of course, I was in D.C. for the annual Hold Their Feet to the Fire Festival. I will be back next year as well. So he starts off, and they use sources from the National Council of State Legislatures, but they start off by saying that the proponents of granting driving privileges to illegal aliens claim that it will increase road safety. Like I said, the research on that is tenuous. Reduce hit and runs, build trust between police and foreign-born populations, and boost revenues. They also talked about it being economically great. In reality, the policy rewards illegal migrants for breaking the law by enabling them to remain unlawfully present in the country. And again, that's kind of the point. If you make it easy for them to continue to break the law, then you increase the likelihood of their continuation of that behavior. And you can argue any way that you want about it, but that is, again, that's the reality. Driving is a privilege, okay? There's a couple of things that you have to factor in here. Driving is a privilege, and these are people who are in the country illegally and are in constant law-breaking status. I mean, they're perpetually breaking the law. They're on the run from law enforcement. They are hiding from law enforcement. And even in the sanctuary jurisdictions like Cook County, where they released over 1,070 criminal illegal aliens in 2019 alone. Arguments in favor of licenses for illegals, flawed and beside the point. The proponents of the misguided policy frequently dismiss such criticism by claiming that granting licenses to illegals improves road safety, primarily because the foreign nationals are required to pass a driving test before receiving driving privileges. And we all know that as long as you pass a driving test, you're a safe driver, right, Joe? Nobody who has a driver's license is a terrible driver. They also argue that the policy is good for the economy, and the implication being that it will help them get to work, which, of course, they're not allowed to work. So it's an interesting argument. However, the ability to successfully pass a driving test does not necessarily translate into safe driving. What is more, there are good reasons to doubt that individuals who violated our immigration laws to enter the U.S. will suddenly transform into law-abiding drivers if given state licenses. Now, there's also some suggestions out there, and, you can, again, think about this however you want, but there are illegal immigrants for fear of being caught driving with a moving violation, choose not to drive. For this very same reasons that the young lady who said her parents are illegal aliens and if they drive, they are constantly afraid, which I guess she's admitting that they drive illegally. They're constantly afraid of being deported if they get stopped for a moving violation. Okay. You're not being deported for the moving violation. You're being deported for the much bigger crime. But beyond that, there's a lot of illegal immigrants who choose not to drive because of that reality. And so they choose to take public transportation, which is much safer. Okay. If you give driver's licenses to illegal immigrants, the likelihood of illegal immigrants driving is going to increase. All right. At least that's one theory. And therefore, you're going to have more people on the roads who do not come from the United States, do not speak the language, and may not be proficient in driving. Now, of course, they say, well, the driving test. Yeah, okay. We know how that works with Americans who pass the driving test. But like I said, it's a privilege. It's not a right. And for any state legislature or anybody to stand up and go, this is a human rights issue. No, it's not. It's not a human rights issue. Stop pretending that it is. And it's not going to be good for the economy, for people who are already breaking the laws and a drain on the economy anyway. So it doesn't make any sense. But in fact, you could argue that it would hurt public transportation. And all of the environmentalists should probably be angry about it. So we'll keep an eye on it. Although it's failed for 7 times in a row, it'll probably fail this time, but you never know. Got more coming up.